Solid. All right.
This is what we reserved.
So yeah, if any sponsors want to send us matching cameras, that'd be great. Looking at you, Black Magic.
Should I put this back? You got it. It's fucking hot.
This is our 3 camera setup. We got a GoPro, a fucking DJI drone. We're taking all sponsorships possible.
You're gonna get to see the evolution.
This looks so ridiculous. I love it.
How this came about.
Okay.
Where this idea came from. It's hot in here.
It is a pleasant 120 degrees in this garage, and I'm not upset. So enjoying it. Okay.
So let's talk about why we're doing this, where the idea came from. So it's an interesting time, I think, to be a filmmaker today. Nobody really knows how to be an independent filmmaker.
Yeah.
So we both went to film school. We graduated film school. We've done a lot of different things, and we're still trying to figure out, okay, how do we create our own? I mean, even if we're trying to be hired by a Netflix and Amazon, what does that look like? How do we break into the industry, so to speak? Are those doors even open anymore, or do we have to just do it all ourselves? I mean,
It's a program for filmmakers by filmmakers. It's the Breaking Indie Podcast.
it's an interesting time with social media. It's an interesting time to be a filmmaker, to be an artist, because you kind of have to. People want to see into your world.
The
we
process.
don't really,
I think there's definitely more these days, more of a behind the scenes kind of appreciation for the process, and that is actually a lot of times more of the narrative itself is the story of how you guys got to do what you're doing.
So this is the story.
So all about how we got into a garage and baked ourselves out. There's no weed here. I'm just hotboxing this with my own odor. It's great. But yeah, should we also maybe talk a little bit about who we are? I assume if anyone found the channel, they're a friend or family, so they may know who we are. But maybe we should talk a little bit about.
Well, yeah. So that's why I think this podcast is important. Not only for prospective filmmakers to kind of watch our journey, to learn tips and tricks, to hear interviews with other filmmakers, but I think it's also, a way to not just be a name on an IMDb page, or somebody sees something of your work and they're like, who the hell is this person? I think it's kind of, can we identify with these people? So I went to film school. I went to USC Film School, and also the theater school, the drama school. Wanting to be an actor, growing up in LA, having the stars in my eyes. But I also always had an appreciation for film specifically, writing specifically. So I took screenwriting classes alongside acting stuff. So then, did that, graduated college, and really went the traditional actor route. I'm going to audition, I'm going to get an agent, I'm going to get into rooms, back when we still went into rooms. It's not like it was that long ago, but pre-COVID.
Growing up in LA, do you feel like you got earlier access to that, or was it pretty much just kind of...
Not really. I think my parents knew the industry. My dad is a film editor, so I think they knew the industry and didn't want me to become a child star, which if you watched any of those recent documentaries is perhaps a bullet that I dodged.
Wise, yeah.
Because, I was a cute kid with a 90s bowl cut. I mean, I looked the part to be on one of those kind of sitcom-y shows. I could have been potentially, who knows, but it's my parents specifically said, no, you're not going to go out for that as a child. Go to high school, have a regular life, and then go to college, and then, do that. So it's a weird thing, because I feel like a lot of actors that we see on the screen, we don't realize they have careers as children, as teenagers. So in that sense, obviously I don't have credits in big movies or anything like that. So perhaps I missed out on something. I don't know. But leaving college and going the route I did, you leave college and everybody's like, who the hell are you? Why should we care? And yeah, after, a number of years feeling this weird sense of doors being closed, I mean, you get rejected a lot. It's just part of the job. But I just felt, I don't know, I didn't feel like I was gaining ground. I felt like I was on a hamster wheel, just kind of running in place, trying to beg people to even get me in the room. I mean, it's not even like, cool, get me the job. Get me in the room. That's all I care about. And I'm still struggling with that. So it's something where I feel like I shifted, and I think a lot of us have shifted into writing our own content, producing our own content, getting our pennies and pinching pennies and making cuts and saving up money from our normal jobs to produce content.
Well, yeah, and I think that's probably a big aspect of the conversation that I imagine we're going to have is that push to building your own content. And it's no longer, even for actors, like it's no longer like, cool, I'm doing Stanislavski and I'm the master of my thespian activities. It's like, cool, I'm an actor / writer / editor / YouTube influencer / I also drive for Uber Eats / but
most
really,
of my money comes from Uber Eats.
Right, really.
Or Uber, and I'll tell you while you're my passenger in the back, hey,
also check out my headshot.
Yeah, it's very
But no, I think it is like you have to kind of be an all-in-one creator. And for me, I'm Brenden, that's Cole, by the way. I kind of went to film school for that. That was the way that they taught the program, is it's not like a specialty track where you do cinematography, you do editing. They really push the all-in-one filmmaker.
Which they did at USC as well. I think it's a common thing. Yeah.
Yeah. So like for me, high school, loved acting. My drama teacher was like, you should learn how to make the movies so that you kind of know what they're looking for.
So would you attribute that person to kind of getting you in that mindset early on? Or?
Yeah, I think well, my sister and I would always make spoofs before we knew what they were.
I mean, I have those too, the home videos.
That was really the impetus, is like grab the VHS player, do in-camera editing, like whatever.
I feel like that's a commonality. If you grab the camera.
They used to be like,
whatever.
Oh, my dad had an 8mm. Well, no, we had a VHS, like you put it in there.
Oh, that's funny. That's even before me. I was the mini DV.
Oh, yeah,
tapes.
yeah.
That was my beginning. VHS though, like the full actual.
In high school, I saved up, bought a mini DV camera, and then like everywhere I had the camera. So in high school, I was the one who did like our senior video and like all the stuff.
Right.
And so in high school is when I learned editing. I learned on Final Cut. And luckily for me, I mean, whatever, like by the time I got to college, I had more experience, I think, in high school than most people had going into college, where it's like, I already created a 50-minute video with, editing and all this stuff.
You edited in computer.
Yeah.
Which that's a distinction. I entered film school having maybe put something on a computer once. I mean, we edited in camera. I mean, it was like, you're like, and cut. And then you like go and you're like, oh, we didn't like that. So you rewound the tape to like. And
you get the second of the like.
And then it's like, and then you like get like the millisecond of the previous take. Where it's like,
chin.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. So that's how I edited. Was in tape. But yeah, so you're already coming in.
So that was like, I think the great thing about the film school I went to, which went bankrupt and shut down the year. I know, right? It's like all this money, and then it's like, College of Santa Fe, shout out, thanks so much. But yeah, so I do think that was something really, unforeseen that became advantageous for me, is like knowing a little bit about a lot. And for stuff like this, like we have no crew. Like our soundboard is by my feet. I'm like, batteries are still plugged in? Great. We have 3 cameras that don't match. So the quality is like maybe not the best, guys. Bear with us.
And we're in the garage where like we store our gear. I mean, this is
it's bare bones.
But that's
that's kind of what we're doing.
Right? I think that's like the point of why we're doing this, is because everybody has to, at least initially. And sorry to cut you off on your story, but like as as creators, we're always trying to create legitimacy. I think that's really how you get jobs in the industry, is somebody's trusting you with their money. And so how do you build like a level of like legitimacy? So, every conversation you have, everything you put online, everything you're putting on social media is pretty much, the whole fake it till you make it thing is really like, how do I put on a veneer, a sexy mask, external?
So sexy.
I mean, no, but seriously, like you're trying to like
Yeah.
make yourself look cooler than you are, and you're trying to elevate yourself. And so I personally think that this podcast is really more about getting rid of, breaking through that need for, and it's interesting, I think consumer-wise or like audience-wise, this veneer, this fakeness on social media that projects this image, people hate it. I mean, I think we're coming to a place where we are craving more and more authenticity.
Jinx. Yeah, no, absolutely.
And
because
vulnerability about us being like, we're in a garage trying to figure this out, so.
yeah, I mean, first of all, I think people can smell the like, look how fancy and cool my life is, and you're like,
Well, now they
but
can.
like,
Yeah,
yeah,
for sure.
but yeah, of course, there's like,
Yeah.
the whole growing period when social media is new, that it's like, anyway. But going back to what you're saying, I think the importance isn't so much about selling the sexiness of like, oh, look at what I'm doing. It used to be.
That's what I'm saying.
But,
It used to be.
But now it's more the legitimacy, the authenticity
Right,
aspect
right.
is more the fact that it's like starting out, especially, with what we're talking about and like getting into the industry, nobody wants to be the first one to vet you. Right? I'm not going to give nobody,
Give you your
$1 million
first break.
and be
Yeah.
like, let's see what you can do, kid. You really made a cool film in film school about, black and white sex on a like whatever. Like, first of all, I only say that because like I've never made a good film in film school. Never seen a good film out of film school. Like they're
Well,
very
they
rare.
used to, but that is what it
Maybe
used to
AFI,
be. But that
but
is what
like,
it used to be.
yeah.
I mean,
Well, yeah, THX 1138, like
Yeah, like-
back in the old days. Yeah,
well,
sure.
it's not even just, Lucas. It's all these different filmmakers really did kind of have their student films, first films. The studios were hunting. I mean, they would the studio reps would go to the thesis films of these people. I mean, they might still do it a little bit, but like not really.
Yeah.
And it's also because, we have the internet. We have, people you don't have to show up to a senior thesis film at USC to learn about people. We have but then it's like so saturated. So it's like I almost feel like
then how do you escape?
this belief in young talent, this search for new, fresh talent, really it doesn't, as far as I can see, and talking to other people, it doesn't really exist anymore. You kind of have to build your own audience, which that ultimately to me is now the biggest sign.
Yeah, finding
legitimacy.
making your own success, which is
Like you could make an amazing film, but if you don't have an audience, is it gonna sell? I feel, and then the opposite is true. You can make a not so great film, but if you have
There's
an audience
something
behind
about
it,
that people are like, oh, this
or
thing,
us, you as individuals or something, or
pay
like,
for clicks.
or like, I mean, here's the other thing: how are they casting actors now in like lower budget projects? They look at how many Instagram followers they have.
Or
They
going
don't
back
give
to
a
the often
heck what they're.
are we self-editing?
They don't give a fuck.
like,
what
no
they're-
swearing on the podcast. You're not going to get sponsors. Shit.
They don't give a shit. About,
No, but then also the authenticity. It's like,
Yeah.
no, we want a real skateboarder. Like, no, we want someone who can like actually look like they sing opera. You're like, but
which
they
that's
don't.
fine, but it's
For specialized skills, I get it.
can they
But
carry
more
a
often
film?
than not now is like, like we're not casting actors. We're casting people who do that, who can also like look comfortable on camera, which is okay. But
Well, and I'm
it
not
is
saying-
like an interesting kind of going back to authenticity.
Right,
like that's really what people are hungry for right now.
But it's like, I'm not even saying that there aren't, obviously, we've seen it, very talented, young or unknown actors right now. But I feel like casting is getting to be such an interesting process where I mean, how many Netflix shows or how many, they just feel like what I would refer to as like a CW show. And not to knock that, but in terms of the acting, it's like, look at me being hot. Look at me being hot. I have a bunch of
eyes.
I have a bunch of social media followers, and luckily sometimes you strike gold with that. Like I know Sophie Turner on Game of Thrones, she openly talks about it in an interview where she's like, they gave me the part because I had social media followers.
Oh, I was like, what CW show is Sophie Turner on?
No, like Game of Thrones. But I'm saying,
yeah.
She openly admits, like, but she's great. I mean, I'm not.
No, I mean, yeah,
she's
obviously fantastic. But to that point, I have a friend who is a pretty successful indie producer, and they had like one of the famous blue collar comedy tour comedians on their movie, and it was like, oh, that's a name. I know that guy. And then they had a social media famous person. And she's like, we got so much more pull from the social media girl.
Right.
Than from like the name that we thought was going to be the bankable. And
that's
I'm sure that having that name probably helped with distribution and like probably funding.
Right.
But when it came to like actually pulling eyes onto the project, and they did a distribution model where it's like, they own most of it, but then you're responsible for getting the audience to click on and rent it, that actually pulled a lot more weight for them. Because it was like,
makes sense, honestly. Yeah.
She's got a bigger reach. She's got a bigger demographic. More people are also loyal to like following through to click on that and actually watch it than, oh yeah, I kind of remember that guy from like the 90s who did the blah, blah, blah.
Right.
Not to harp on that, like, but you know.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting because, look, I'm not knocking, you know, and as a filmmaker, it's funny. You have the both sides, right? So actor over here, filmmaker over here. Yeah, I understand. I would cast somebody who had more Instagram followers to get more eyes on my film, and I would take that into account. But I still, what I'm really saying is there's two sets of skills. And it's like, you know, okay, shut up. And if that's a thing and you're complaining about it, go get those social media followers. I understand that, but it's a different skill set. Someone could be amazing at getting followers online and not a good actor in a film. And there's been many times where I or others have watched a film or a show and it kind of doesn't work because the person is just not giving an authentic, good performance. And so you get taken out of the world, right? That's, you know, you're like, I don't really like this. But they cast them because they were hot, they had good social media following, you know. And of course, there's people that have both of those skills, and those are the most, you know, successful people that are super castable, whatever. But I think there's really another subset, not just of actors, but of artists, writers, all these extremely talented artists that maybe don't have the skill set to market themselves on social media, to gain followers, to gain eyes on the internet, but are extremely talented, right? And pre-internet, really, the industry used to have to search for those people. It wasn't like, it wasn't an expectation. I feel like there's an expectation now that as an artist, if you're not also good at selling yourself, you're not somebody
artist.
I want. You're not hireable, you're not castable. Whereas
it is a lot of work. I mean, to do a YouTube show,
it's another
like,
full-time job.
Yeah, it is. There is. It's not like, oh, that was easy, blah blah blah. It's accessible. Like, it's more accessible now to put yourself out there. But props to those like famous YouTubers and the people who do that consistently, even the not famous ones. Like, that is a lot of work, right?
Right.
So it is discouraging and hard as an artist when you're like, I just want to make my short film. I don't want to also then have to build a YouTube following and do like all the hoops. And I feel like that might be a separate conversation, maybe not, but like how certain art lends itself, or certain types of projects, a certain type of channel may lend itself to something like YouTube, where it's, I want to make, you know, avant-garde whatever, may not be the right, YouTube may not be the right platform for the type of thing that you're doing. So it's harder to bridge like some of those things too, where okay, well, I'm going to make only how-to videos and like have my certain niche thing, that's a great thing for YouTube. But it's like, I want to do, you know, Renaissance painting. Maybe that doesn't translate as well onto social media, or, you know, I don't know. I'm sure there's a million ways to spin it, but I think that's a separate conversation, is just like finding the right platform for the right style of thing that you're doing.
And finding finding your audience, really.
Yeah.
It's really discouraging. Well, okay, so here's the opposite. Here's the counter, which is why we're doing this podcast. So earlier I kind of spoke to this idea that Hollywood, as it were, was always, you know, insulated and, you know, had doors closed or whatever, you know, exclusive. But there was I think there was more of a search to be like, where's the new talent? Where's the, you know, new voice? And I'm going to get credit. I'm the agent who discovered, you know, whatever, that idea of, oh, I'm discovering this person. It was part of the zeitgeist of Hollywood. Now that doesn't exist anymore, but here's the alternative. Well, it doesn't exist anymore, so it feels like, who are you? Nobody cares, you know? Except, so it's all about finding, you know, your way, your voice. You know, Van Gogh, for example, a lot of these painters, they died and then they become successful. So it's like, how do you find your audience? Mm-hmm. And before the internet, we as artists would really need somebody in the position of an agent or in the position of a manager or a producer, you know, somebody in the industry to discover us, to then put us in front of an audience. Whereas now it's, you know, fully democratized. We're shooting this podcast in a garage that we store our equipment and putting it on the internet. And maybe no one's going to see it, but there's still an opportunity to find your audience. And I think that's the hardest part. And it could be any type of niche. You know, you could, you know, chop food with a samurai sword, and that's your whole thing.
I'd totally watch that.
And that's what I'm saying, is like, there is an audience of people that want to see somebody throw food in the air and slice it with a samurai sword. They want that. This podcast is really about finding an audience and being able to have these conversations that people can learn from, but also to kind of showcase our journey and hopefully show that it's possible to come from nothing and have no connection. I mean, we really don't, you know, I had a dad who was in the film industry, but I really don't have, you know, many connections from him to potentially get work. You know, you don't come from a film family. We are the opposite of Nepo babies, basically. So it's like, can we, people with no connections, of course, like we've met people, we've worked with people.
But we didn't really start with the golden spoon, and like, I mean...
Is it still possible? I mean,
I don't know.
I look at, you know, it's crazy. I'll watch a film and I'll be like, wow, that person's great. How did they, maybe a new actor or a young actor or something, I'm like, how did they find this person? Oh, they're blah blah blah's cousin, or it's you know.
I mean, it certainly helps, right? Like,
well, it's just happens
really,
so
really
often.
hard,
Yeah,
to get into the film industry
with no prior connections.
Because it's like there's a lot of luck, there's a lot of who you know, there's a lot of being talented and in the right place at the right time.
Luck is a big
but you know, I guess coming out of like no idea how film worked, right? Like it was such a mystery behind the curtain that I had to like explore the circus. And then coming out of film school, there's like the whole experience business side where it's like I'm 20-something years old coming out of film school thinking I'm hot shit. And then I started working as a PA, which like was so lucky to get that job because getting the first job is always the hardest.
Right.
So lucky to have that job. But they don't teach you how to be a PA in film school. I'm like,
exactly. So
cool, I know how to do camera. They're like, yeah, shut the fuck up. No, like you're not the camera op, okay? You're the PA. Go get them a sandwich.
They need a class in film school on how to get food orders right.
Yeah.
How to
check the food order at the restaurant.
Make sure that it's vegan and gluten free for your main actor. how to get coffee orders right.
Yeah.
How to coil cables. Like this is what
You don't get a wrangle cable as well. I guess some PAs you do.
101 is like how to
when you pro tip for a PA, when you get hot food, turn on the heater on your car and put it down by your feet and blast that shit. And then drive as fast as you can back to the office. So when they're like, "Whoa, the food is still hot," you're like, "Bonus points."
Just get a job at Uber Eats, and that's how you be a PA.
That's good. That's a good way to make money and learn how to do all the things in PA. But that was the thing, is like coming out of film school, my ego was just like so inflated, and I'm like,
same.
I'm the best at everything, and they're like, no,
the
you're not. And
whatever.
also, like, no one wants you to be the best at everything. We want you to just watch, listen, and learn. And then over the time, you build those connections. If you don't have family in the industry and you're lucky enough to like find some wedge into the door or into the room, you know, it's really about being the right type of person. And that's another thing they don't teach you, is like, how do you just not be a total bad person?
You know,
insert
how do you
word
not
there.
annoy people in certain situations?
How do you just be someone likable, or someone that, you know, you want to work with? Like, I don't care if that person isn't the best qualified for the job. They're the person that I want to have around. And I feel like that goes like any office job or any job. Like, they really hire off the person, not necessarily the credentials. In in a lot of cases.
Well, no, I mean, it's very evident, because then you're working with certain people and you're like, how the fuck did this person get this job? And why do they still have this job?
Because they're super chill, man.
But everything can be learned to a degree. Yeah. So I think in those in those like entry level, especially like PA, you know, track or whatever. Yeah, of course anyone can be taught how to do the basics, and you know, having a drive and having a hunger. Also, though, you could be the most likable PA ever, and then never be anything other than a PA. I've seen people go a decade more just as a PA, and it's not that they love being a PA. They want to, you know, go and be whatever, something else first. You know, camera, DP, even an AP.
That's another advancing your placement in the career is also really, like so interesting. And that's like, I think also that's kind of some of the stuff that I want to explore in this podcast is, you know, learning. I think that's the biggest thing, right? Is learning from other people's experiences, learning from other people's successes and mistakes, and just exploring how other people navigate other departments, or just like navigate their own career, or navigate life, personal life inside of the film industry. Like, I think that's just another journey, because the film industry is so demanding. It's hard to balance both personal life and professional life. So I feel like there's a lot, and I know that we've already kind of talked to some people on our journey, and we're kind of coming at this fresh, and just being like, wow, okay, like there is so much to gain from just having conversations and exploring out of pure curiosity what it's like for other people. And I think that's something that I'm really excited about this podcast is, we may not have like the biggest names in Hollywood, but I don't think that matters. I think you get to learn a lot from anybody who's taken time to dedicate their life and actually like have experience. You know, we're not necessarily picking on anyone specific, but it's like most of the people that we're going to talk to have been in this industry for, you know, probably a decade or, you know, something like that, even though we're still talking about breaking into it.
Yeah, that's what's
it feels like you're constantly trying to break into it, right?
I mean, well, and then it's, you know, once you've broken in, that doesn't ensure that you're always going to get work forever. You still have to find the next job. I mean, it was evidenced during the writer's strike, you know, writers, actors, whoever, you know, all these people were just like, and then the SAG strike, it's like these people who you've seen, who you recognize, who if you would walk on the street, you go, oh, you may not know their name necessarily, but you'll look at this person and be like, oh my God, that was like a main character on a hit show that I really liked. And they are like I haven't been able to get work in years.
Yeah.
Where I'm struggling. I had to sell my house. I had to, so it doesn't even guarantee your longevity, your you're always hunting for the next job. It's a tough career. Why do we do it?
Well, and I thought that provided some interesting opportunity just to have conversations with, non-film people. Was like, okay, so like you're a SAG actor, right? I'm like, yeah. They're like, so like, what did you make? I was like, cool. Do I ask you that shit? But also, yeah, let's talk about it.
Not a lot.
Not as much as you'd think, right? And it's like, and it's not even that like the paycheck, if you're working, is bad. Like the paycheck's good if you're working. It's how often do you work, right?
Right.
That's really the hard thing. And like, yeah, okay, if you're a season regular on a TV show, great. That's nice.
But that's the thing. Even those individuals were still struggling. And that was the whole point, is like with the residual checks and things like that. I mean, it was like somebody on, I think they're like Orange is the New Black had a whole thing where like a bunch of actors that were literally on every episode were like, I got 5-cent checks.
Yeah.
Like I got 5 cent
and that is the
checks.
biggest thing is the residuals is like
in between jobs.
Where the dream thing comes from. It's like, oh, I'm still making money from this movie that I did 10 years ago. And it's like, yeah, well, so am I. I get 5-cent checks from those.
Well, 10 years is a
but
long time.
Streaming is
like,
I know.
Within a couple span of a year, it's going to be
but
less
yeah,
and less.
The streaming
over time.
conversation is the big part of that, right?
But a lot of people think, they see that and they're like, well, yeah, you worked for 2 months out of the year. You shouldn't get paid a full year's salary. You barely worked at all. And it's like, we want to work. I want to work every month of the year. It's not that I don't want to.
Yeah.
It's that this industry, you don't get paid for the time in between jobs where you are hustling, you are auditioning, you're writing something new, you're, making a podcast, like you're not necessarily, there's so much preparation time, constantly keeping your skills honed that people don't really take into account. If anyone would love, when you're on like a multi-season show, that's the best job. That's what everybody wants, is to be able to like stay working.
Yeah, and I think it's also funny too, like people just kind of have a certain, depiction of what they think it's like. But for you, example, right? Like you went to USC. You take weekly acting classes. You have to pay to get your headshots. You have to pay to upload those headshots, and that's like
each one
is
money.
$20 or $15 plus a slate shot, and then it's like by the time you upload that, and then it's $20 for a minute or whatever it is, $60 a minute for your reel, and then it's like, oh, okay, I've invested.
You gotta buy equipment.
A lot of money into this, and it's like I got 1 day of work, and it's like, scratch that. I got an audition. Right. Like, oh yes! Like I'm finally making it, right?
Yeah. So, full circle, after having spent years having trouble getting in the room, you're finally like, and as somebody who studied writing, likes writing, and even writing is a whole nother conversation. It used to be that you could write something, and if it was a good script, you could potentially get it in front of people. You could potentially have conversations where they're like, wow, this guy's good. I was listening to Script Notes, and they're talking about being writers in the 90s. And first of all, both of them, John August and Greg Mazin, they both, on every episode, constantly are like, fuck you, it's your fault, you're a lazy piece of shit. It's not like they're like, we had it so good and you guys have it hard. And I agree with that, but at the same time, it just, nobody will read your shit. Nobody gives a fuck. If you don't know somebody already, no one is reading your shit.
Super uplifting message.
They are not.
I'm not discouraged at all.
So, there's, as far as I'm aware, unless you get lucky, there's really only one main route towards any type of success, and that is doing it yourself, making it yourself. You can't, the whole, even as, and it's not like this is new, even as early as, if you watch that Mark Duplass, South by Southwest.
Oh yeah, the talk of cavalry isn't coming.
Which was 2015, I think. He says the same thing. Yeah, cavalry is not coming. Nobody gives a shit. Even when you go to Sundance and you win at Sundance, and your agent goes, "Hey man," or you get an agent from that or something. It's like, you won Sundance, I got you. No, they still don't give a shit about you. They just don't. It's been interesting to watch people have that success, and this kind of, I think, goes into the next segment of this conversation, is the film festival circuit was kind of, it still is, definitely, but it really was that place. Okay, no, I'm not going to approach a producer in a cafe and show him my script and get him to, give me a movie deal. Where can I go?
Then why did I move to Los Angeles?
Exactly. That's a whole nother conversation. But it's like, okay, I either self-produce something for, my own money, a short film. Maybe I've entered a screenplay in a screenwriting competition. But film festivals was kind of the next thing. Okay, I'm going to go to a film festival, and there's going to be people in the audience that see my work. There's some level of notoriety. Maybe I win an award, and from that, I then will get my connection into the industry. I then will get a manager, an agent. Somebody will come up to me and be like, "Hey, wow, that was really good. What's your next project?" And then maybe perhaps you will email someone your script. Even that is, so far in my experience, not even just me going to film festivals, but other people I know going to film festivals. Even that is starting to kind of deteriorate in terms of the likelihood that being successful at a major film festival nets you the golden ticket or whatever. Jim Cummings is this guy who, did Thunder Road and all that stuff, and he's working for sure, and he's making great stuff, but he talks about, he won South by Southwest and Sundance, and still, even right now, it's not like Netflix is banging on his door to work with him. And so, okay, what does he do? And what are we doing? And what is kind of the move is, fuck it. Like, let's make it ourselves. How do we, and I think, if anything, we're going to be talking to a lot of people. We went to the Santa Fe Film Festival and we talked to a lot of people. We're going to continue to do that. But I think really what this podcast is about is, okay, what is ultimately the larger question? What is a way to break into this industry in a way that we can self-sustain, creating any level of, whether it be short episodic, long form episodic, feature? How can we self-sustain that? How can we circumvent the studio model, the streamer model? How do we not need the Amazons and Netflixes of the world to give us a production budget? How can we create something that has value fully independently from ourselves? And then sure, maybe that'll gain notoriety, and from there we might get other production companies on board to, help sponsor future projects. That's the dream ultimately. But what is the methodology, and is it possible to completely self-fund, produce, motivate, and then create a successful, subscription model that generates income enough to fund the next project?
Yeah. I also feel, and I already know that we're going to, we're going to get really good conversations with people where we're going to learn cool tips, tricks, lessons, things that as an indie producer are going to help you shave a lot of time off those bumps over your career of I had to learn that lesson the hard way.
Right.
I think learning from other people is the best way to just, skip some of the hardships. But I think even if you're not trying to be an indie producer, you're going to learn a lot about how to move forward in the film industry, whether you're trying to do sound or camera or whatever your journey is. Listening to these interviews with other people is going to provide a lot of opportunities to just, get little tips and tricks of like, oh, I should do this with my resume, or I should do that to like build a connection with another producer who might help me get a job.
Sure.
And I think if you are a producer or you are a director, the other thing about having these conversations that we're having is it gives you a really good opportunity to look at the industry as a whole. So getting to know more about self-distribution, getting to know what it's like to do camera and sound and costume or whatever. It's not just one set profession. Like, I love the Deacons podcast, but like, of course, you're only talking he talks to ADs and stuff too, but like, it's mostly just cinematography, right?
Right.
This gives us opportunities to kind of talk to all types at all levels. So we will talk to people who are veterans in the film industry and get to hear some pretty cool stories, I'm sure, of like the back in the old days stuff, but also people who are just now coming into it and seeing the hardships and the roadblocks that they face and having just a better understanding of how to navigate that minefield, you know?
Yeah.
So I
I'm
think
really excited to.
same.
I mean, especially some of these interviews that we already shot at the Santa Fe Film Festival. I mean, there's some nuggets in there.
I learned so much, and that was
time.
really what was cool to me is how much every interview brought a totally unique and different kind of narrative, all in the same world.
Yeah.
But it was like everyone had something else to bring to that conversation, and we did them all mostly like isolated from each other. So it's not like, oh, I heard Danny Trejo speak about this, and this was my experience. It was like all very organic. There was just something to be gained from every one of those interviews.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think even for the few that we've already shot, I think we've got some cool stuff in store. So yeah, it's worth subscribing and listening to a few more of these. Yeah.
Really, really excited to share some of these interviews, not just with, people that we didn't know before, but even some of the people that we've worked with.
Yeah.
And really pick their brain in a way that we weren't able to necessarily do so conversationally. I mean, I think the format of a podcast, it provides, again, legitimacy to asking a little bit of a deeper question than over a couple of beers. I mean, yes, that's a great, time also to learn things, but
yeah, I'm
can't
sure
go
my
wrong with
friends.
a couple beers.
Yeah,
but
I'm sure my friends are a lot more like down to have this conversation when it's under the pretense of, okay, this is what we're here to talk about, versus me being like, shot, tell me about how I'm gonna make money off of your experiences.
That's how you get the R-rated stories, perhaps, on the set.
Yeah.
But in terms of the learnings, in terms of the sharing of kind of the more pragmatic learnings, it's been a really, even from somebody I've already known very closely, I was like, I didn't know that. I didn't know about that experience. You talk about it maybe on a surface level of like, oh, I shot this film and I did this. But then when you're like, okay, yeah, but actually specifically, how did this go this way? Why did it go this way? What did you learn from that? So yes, super excited to watch some more of these interviews.
And we do bust into tequila at some point.
I think it's the
For
whole
better or
time.
for worse. Dude, oh man, doing a podcast at a film festival is like so.
Liquor brands sponsor our podcast. That was wild. That was tough.
I mean, yeah, dude, that whole
we had
time
like a
I
weird.
was so hungover.
Well, also
every episode, I'm just like
more and more progressively. You can see
more
we might put
hungover.
them out of order, but you'll know which
you'll
one's
know.
first shot at the end.
You'll know how earlier in the day, the worse it looks. And you're just like, I'm sobered up, and now I'm not. Yeah. Anyway, it's a film festival. If you haven't been to one, you'll get it.
It's also very run and gun. Our setup was very run and gun. So the quality isn't perfect, and it's growing pains. It was our first time. shooting this style and shooting in a location that we didn't have control over.
Yeah.
So
and
bear
again,
with
no
us.
crew.
And again, we're the crew. There is no crew.
Yeah. There's no
we
one
barely
behind
even-
any
yeah,
of these cameras.
Yeah, literally.
There's no one else in this room. It's like I got my sound stuff right here. For a while, this wasn't even going to be plugged in.
No, it
yeah,
is
guys,
not, right?
it's weird.
It is plugged in.
Hi, ow! I just pulled my hair. I think we're gonna have to wrap it up here. I just injured my follicles.
Oh God, workers' comp. But oh wait, that doesn't exist either. Well, I would like to have one more little segue into, since we're here.
We already broke the fourth wall.
I want to have one last segue into what the heck we as filmmakers are doing outside of this podcast. What is
Besides
our
Uber Eats.
next what?
Besides Uber Eats,
Besides Uber Eats, yeah.
we'll take sponsorship from Uber Eats as well. By the way.
Yeah, Uber Eats, if
Yeah.
you're listening, give me more rides. No, I don't. Obviously
More burritos.
More burritos.
We would love to eat
Better
burritos.
tippers.
Yeah.
More tips. But okay, so we have shot something out in New Mexico that is planned to be episodic, following a season arc. Something that we together wrote, something that we both have acted in, but something really that we produced ourselves.
And presented at the film festival.
And
I think we
presented
should bring that full circle.
at
That's why
the
we're
film
at this
festival,
festival. Yeah,
at the Santa Fe Film
in
Festival.
conjunction with being there for Breaking Indie.
And it won Best New Mexico Short, which was cool. But now we are faced with the prospect of, okay, we showed 3 episodes in tandem, but now it's like, okay, now what do we do?
Mm-hmm. We did the festival thing. We got, and it was more than just the Santa Fe Film Festival. We did actually
Right.
quite a few, and got some success outside of that as well. But yeah, it's like, what's the next step?
Right.
We didn't get approached by Netflix. Darn it! That was
Well, that's the thing.
whole plan.
Well, so then we were like, okay, can we package a, pilot or a presentation, essentially, an outline of what our first season's going to look like, or can we adapt it to be a feature for a small 6-figure budget that we shoot on a shoestring budget, get some smaller production / distribution companies involved. Can we do that? Can we go that route? And we did. We were approached some, smaller companies, and we were like, hey, give us $100,000 here, $100,000 there. Maybe we could shoot a feature for you. Maybe we could do episodic, put a whole pitch deck together. And ultimately it fell through. And, it's just really hard to, take a chance on new people in a new project, theoretically. So because of that, we then were like, screw it. We know that this is a show. We know this is an episodic. Let's continue to write the full episodic breakdown, the full script of our first season, and shoot it ourselves. And shoot it for, gain money here and there from Kickstarter, family, friends, maybe some outside small producers and things like that. And now we're even questioning that. And now,
It's
here
funny
we are.
how the evolution of that particular project, which I'm still I think about it constantly, and I'm very passionate about expanding on it. It's wild to me is how it evolves every day. So we'd spent, weeks or months, whatever, cool, we're doing the feature. And then you and I wrote that script together, and it was like, and I think I think we should go back to short form episodic. And now, even still, I think that's a great idea, and I feel like that's where the world exists, but it's now I'm starting to feel more I feel like every chapter, every 10-minute show or whatever it is its own thing. and like no longer trying to weave an arc over a season.
It's really hard to do that via. So then that speaks to the what's the media,
the platform.
What's the platform that we're putting this on? For YouTube, it's really hard. I mean, obviously people do it, but it's harder to have a season 1 to season 10 through line episodic arc that you have to have watched. Much like a show on HBO, whatever, you have to have watched these episodes in order.
One episode informs the next.
Yeah, you might, whereas episode 5 might get the most views, and then the algorithm of YouTube pushes you to episode 5. So then you have to like look through and be like, okay, wait, where's episode 1? And they're all kind of out of order. The platform itself really doesn't lend itself to having a through line episodic in the same.
Yeah, because like with YouTube, you want to capture as many eyes on an episode as possible to help.
So it's going to push you towards what's trending.
Yeah, so it may not be episode 1. They're going to be like, you really should watch episode 3. And like, I don't know. I think that's kind of the thing where, again, we're like faced with this, well, we want to do the thing, but like, what's the best route to do it?
Right.
And hopefully we'll learn more from some of the conversations with people to help inform that process. And who knows? I guess we still don't know where that journey is going to take us.
Yeah, and I think this is why the podcast to me is an interesting outlet, because we can very much tie this podcast together with the actual projects that we're shooting.
Yeah.
We can use episodes to harken back to other pieces of content that will live either also on YouTube or on other channels. We can be like, oh, we're starting up this, another thing we're thinking about doing is starting up this kind of short form horror comedy, anthology thing that might live on Instagram, that might live on YouTube, things like that. So, and that's like building up a brand, building up a production company. So being able to kind of show the behind the scenes or talk about them with other people and gain insights, and then immediately see those insights or those creative, discoveries that might happen here in this format directly in the actual produced content, I think is a really interesting opportunity to have this podcast live alongside the, actual things that we're making.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think even, cool for the viewer's experience, but for us as well, is like seeing how these conversations, like you said, immediately inform our creative process. And then getting to see the journey of that end of narrative project.
Right.
And you're like, they chose to maybe go that direction from that interview. Like it is, it's interesting because like we're so fortunate that we're going to learn from all these cool minds. But at the same time, like we get to apply that knowledge almost immediately or directly to some of the stuff that we get to do or are trying to do. So I think that's pretty cool. That's pretty awesome.
Yeah, and I think it's also, I wouldn't say rare opportunity. Everybody kind of does this these days, but I think it's a really interesting and unique time because I think we can have much more of a relationship with an audience that isn't just seeing our film and then not knowing who we are or not knowing who's behind it. It's really interesting. Like someone might come from our podcast. They might see the podcast and be like, oh, wow, this is a really interesting conversation about this topic. And then from there, go see, oh, well, what is the show that these guys are doing? What are some of the things that they've shot? And then go see it through that route and already have almost like a quasi-personal connection, knowing who we are, knowing what we stand for, knowing what we talk about when they watch our films. Or the exact opposite could happen. They could see a piece on Instagram or TikTok or wherever it's going to live and just be like, oh, this is funny, this is interesting, and then somehow get routed here, already having a connection to our creative content and then narrative, and then now seeing the kind of behind the scenes of either us talking about that specific piece of content or something completely unrelated. Yeah. So I think to me...
And then we get trolled.
And then we're going to get trolled. We're going to get the bad comments for sure. But
no, that is something that I'm kind of actually looking forward to is the...
Getting trolled?
Oh yeah, hit me, baby. I'm very fragile. Getting the opportunity to have more casual conversations with potential viewers or whatever, that opportunity for engagement, where I think in the past for me, like I'm not really the most public person on social media, so it's not like I really have a lot of random people that I'm like getting feedback or talking to or engagement with. And I think if
you gotta sift through the trolls, it's kind of
right.
thing, but.
Or, just heckle them too and then get trolled even harder. I can't out-troll a troll. I cannot out-troll a troll.
Yeah, if you feed the trolls, we'll get canceled.
Yeah, but no, I do think that's kind of a cool thing, right? Is like, here's someone that we never would have been able to communicate with unless stars align and they've somehow found our content or this podcast or whatever. But it's a cool opportunity for engagement. It's a cool opportunity to also include other creative minds, other filmmakers.
Yeah, I feel like you're a part of it.
Community.
Community.
Yeah, exactly.
And, a community of people, it's like, quote unquote, find your audience. That's kind of seems to be the thing now. And so I just think it's interesting that our audience comes not only from the, narrative films or shorts or what have you that we're creating, but also from the very vulnerable, authentic, sharing our experience as artists, as filmmakers, and hopefully they don't hate us. I don't know.
A community full of trolls.
Yeah.
Everyone's here to just pick on us, Cole.
We're gonna have the best troll community online, and then our troll community is gonna go troll other communities. It's gonna be war. It's gonna be all out.
And then one of us will become president. That's just how it works. Out troll
That's
trolls.
gonna. You just open yourself up right there. Shit.
I don't like this anymore.
And scene. And cut. But yeah, I'm really excited to see where this podcast goes. I'm really excited to share our journey. And hopefully it's a good one rather than a crash and burn one. But
either way, there's something to be learned. All right.
Like and subscribe or whatever.
Yeah, all that. click, save, share with your friends.
Cheers.
Cheers, bud. Let's go get another coffee. I'm ready. I'm awake now. Not hungover this time. Great. So professional. I'd never hire me on this. I'd never watch this and go, we should hire those two guys who sit in the garage with their fucking GoPros.
The fuck was
drones making noise. I don't know.
Oh, it's
the GoPro just in time.
Just in time.
All right.
I think it's dead now.
It's going, I agree.
It's like, I'm done.
I'm done. I'm out.
I'm out. I don't want to be a part of this shit. You don't want no part of this shit, dude.
It sounds like I do, though.
So I think maybe now we can, let's cut here, and then let's maybe...
That's all we got. Well, it was like an hour,
Let's
guys.
cut.
That was fun. I had a good time.
Cutting.
Yeah.
Cut. Kill it.
Static.
Dead. I'm pulling my phone up. That's how you know it's